There's so much more to talk about in that Oregon win. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Rome Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. It is a Monday morning when you're listening to this or watching this. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day on that note. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars Hanson, we're still, like, as we record this on Sunday afternoon, we're still reeling from that just all-time ball game that we got to watch yesterday with Washington beating Oregon 36-33, and the Huskies have moved up into the top 5 for the first time in 6 years, what the AP said. So that would have made it 2018 as I do math really quick, or 2017 as I do math really quickly here in my head. But just thoughts. I know we talked about it a lot on the live podcast yesterday, but now that we've had some time to sit and decompress, what else you got for me?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it was a game that we expected, right? You knew it was going to be back and forth. You knew it was going to be a 4-quarter game. I think, as much as there is the talk of the rivalry, Washington sucks, Oregon sucks, all this and that. It's like nobody actually, I think, believes that, right? Like they say, like, the university sucks, being a Duck sucks, being a Husky sucks, right? That's what the opposing fan bases say to each other, right? And players say, it's like, oh, hey, I wouldn't want to be a Duck. Like, who would want to be a Duck, and who would want to be a Husky? But it's like, but yet they would both want to be a part of the game that happened yesterday. Like that, if you're a college football player, if you're a fan of college football, if you're a fan of just good football in general, you wanted to be a part of that game, or you wanted to be in the stands for that game, because it was even different than last year, where Washington kind of jumps up a little earlier. They have a little more of a comfortable lead at halftime. There were some coaching decisions that I'm sure we'll talk with the coaches on Monday, or actually after this episode, actually probably at the time this episode airs, right around the time this episode airs. But when we get to talk to Ryan Grubb and I believe
Kalen DeBoer and Chuck Morrell.
Exactly. Yeah. Just kind of, because there were some certainly questionable decisions in that game. I think that, that remains to be said. When you kind of go back and watch that game, it's like, when we highlighted on the podcast the 2 3 and outs, why did you not commit to the run more, especially when Dylan Johnson was actually handling the rock pretty well? It's like, I know you have your Heisman quarterback. I know how great the offense is. We all do. But for what that game dictated, especially in that moment when you had the lead, and you had actually almost a 1-2 possession lead at one point, take the air out of the game completely and just own it. Just right. Control the rock, because Oregon was not stopping the run. They're actually at a, especially with Penix being hurt. And now that we found out after the game, not hurt as in severely, but just he was cramping. Wouldn't you want your running backs and other players to kind of get involved, so you're taking more off of Penix? I mean, to me, that almost, I didn't think about it in the moment, and this is why we record on Sundays, because it's like, why even force the issue more with Penix and kind of have those 3 and outs? Why not try and run a little bit more? I mean, maybe run on 1st and 2nd down, and then if you get stopped and you have to throw it on 3rd and long or 3rd and 6, okay, fine. Then you can probably get that conversion because you can trust Penix and the receivers to get the job done. But it was just a real head scratcher why they didn't even commit more to the run. And also the fact that Tybo Rogers and Will Nixon got 1 carry, right?
Will Nixon and Tybo both got 1 carry, yeah. And Sam Adams took a couple of snaps and didn't have a touch.
Exactly, and that was just kind of perplexing, because it wasn't like Oregon was taking away the run, right? If Dylan Johnson had, let's say, 10 carries for 42 yards or 35 yards, like I would understand, okay, the run game is not working, let's try something else. Right. But the run game was working, and they went away from it and let Oregon back into the game. And then Michael Penix again had to put the offense on his shoulders one more time and just connect with the nation's best receiver in the country.
This is my far out conspiracy theory here. Ryan Grubb knew exactly what he was doing the whole time, and that was all just to give Michael Penix his signature Heisman moment. No, I'm just joking, but I wouldn't put it past him. But no, I really do like everything that you're saying there, because that it was something that we were talking about on the sidelines before the game was over, especially just kind of in those waning minutes before that final drive that the Huskies had, where it kind of felt like, oh, well, these 2 3 and outs really did lose them the game. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And why isn't it Dylan Johnson in there on 4th and goal from the 1 yard line? Yeah, he'd taken the last couple of carries, but you're right there. Why are you running from shotgun? It almost looked like there was a miscommunication on that fourth down play because it looked like that it was almost a read option and Penix just didn't keep it where he might have been able to walk into the end zone if you go back and just kind of look at the film from that play, which I thought was really interesting. But there's still so much positive, like just so much positivity around this team right now, right? You need to talk about where they are up to number 5 now. And they're just continuing to climb because this is, and I'm not going to knock either of the next 2 opponents coming up. This was just the strongest opponent that you will face for the majority of the season, especially after you saw what USC did in Notre Dame last night. And then you look at Arizona State's next and Stanford after that. So this was just kind of, all right, pass this test, see what happens. And now I feel like one of the biggest things that you kind of need to mention in all this is health and making sure that this team can be as healthy as possible. Obviously, we talked about Jalen McMillan a little bit yesterday, who, according to Kalen DeBoer, re-aggravated the injury he suffered at Michigan State. And we'll kind of see how his status is throughout the week. You would hope that he's able to play. He was moving around pretty well at the end of the game, but kind of at the start of it, it looked like he was limping around pretty significantly on the sidelines. So we'll kind of just have to see how that plays out. But I think that's one of the biggest things that you kind of need to keep an eye on with this team is the health.
Yeah, especially. Yeah, I mean, the thing with Jalen McMillan, as we've seen, is they don't have that third release valve. Jeremy Bernard is good, but he's just not at the level that McMillan is, especially in this offense yet. And the relationship that McMillan built last year with Penix, along with the other receivers, I'm not describing, but specifically McMillan, we've noticed that that's kind of been a missing piece in this offense. And yes, the offense still puts up 30+ points, still does a good job, does et cetera, et cetera. But I think to have a complete Washington offense, it requires Jalen McMillan at least 80%. I mean, we know J-Mac can probably go at 80 or 90%. I remember last season in the Apple Cup, he didn't practice the entire week leading up to the game and then still went off for 150, like a touchdown or 2. So it's like, he's certainly a gamer in that sense of, he's going to show up if he can show up. But also, if you're Washington at this point and you're looking at your schedule and you're looking at the games that he missed, it was against teams that they should beat without him. Like he had declared for the draft last year, Washington should still beat those Cal and Arizona. And, again, now the Oregon game, kind of that's where it shows through, right? Where you need all your horses at the best level. And, that's why, I mean, maybe even on those two quick 3 and outs, maybe Washington hits Jalen McMillan for a couple of times for, 20 yards and they're at least not 3 and outs, right? There's just certain little small details that go a long way. And I mean, I know it's a coaching cliche, but McMillan is that not small, but like that key cog, that last key in the wheel to actually turn and make it all go.
Yes, because we've seen how good this offense can be without him, but you're right. He takes it to that next level that just kind of like, as a big fan of just the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he's the final Infinity Stone in the gauntlet, right? That just kind of completes everything. I know you're looking at me weird for all our audio listeners. Lars is just like, you're such a nerd. And hey, I know that. All right. I take it to heart. I wear it as badge of honor. But that's really what it is, because you can do so many things and you have so much power without that, but then it just takes everything to that whole extra level. I was talking with a friend after the game who said Jalen McMillan takes this offense from being a 36, 38 points per game offense to a 50 points per game offense. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's still really good, but he makes it just out of this world elite.
Exactly. And I think that, and again, the discussion we have with Washington this year is it's like, okay, we know how good they are. They're going to win 10 games, right? You set the bar at 10. It's, can you win 12? Can you win 11? Right. Can you win 13? And you make now when Washington is at 5, sitting right outside the college football playoff cutoff point. But again, with everything in front of them, someone's going to lose above them. So
especially with Ohio State and Michigan sitting above them too.
Exactly. That was kind of the insinuation. Somebody's going to lose above that matchup and will at least drop out of the top 4. And because I think with the narrative around the Pac-12 this year, they're not going to not have a team get in, even as a 1 loss.
Right. So one thing I wanted to ask you, kind of before we move on here, is I don't necessarily want to say which team do you think is going to drop out, but if the college football playoff rankings came out this week, do you think Washington would be in the top 4?
Yeah, they would be 4, but they would be. I don't think they would be 3, like I said last night, but I think they would certainly be 4.
I agree, because there's just you can't keep this team out at this point for anything that they're doing, especially with like Ohio State and Michigan being 2-3. Like, I get it. And yeah, one of those teams is gonna have to lose. And I feel like one of the big narratives around that game every year is, all right, who's gonna go to the Big Ten championship and who's not. So it feels like it's just kind of setting up for that again. I can't remember exactly what their schedule is, but I think that's something to keep an eye on. And before we move on here, we've got to take a couple minutes here. We've got to talk about our friends over at Game Time, because I'm excited to talk about Game Time because Husky fans, there are only 3 home games left this year. And do you want an easy, no stress ticket buying experience? Then Game Time is the place for you. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy sports for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. It's super great to buy on Game Time. You can get views from all the seats in the venue. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. The all-in prices show your total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees, and you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And as we're recording this on an NFL Sunday, it's very fun to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks as well, because I know, shout out to my buddy Nick, I am beating him in fantasy this week real bad, and I would probably be beating him on Prize Picks too, because yeah, I own him. I have a fantasy championship. He doesn't. This is just my chance to put that out into the world. And I needed a chance to do that. And I really enjoy it. And Prize Picks is the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's at prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. And with the code LockedOnCollege, you get a first deposit match up to $100. At Prize Picks are daily fantasy sports made easy. Okay, Lars, this is something we touched on a little bit already, but there's a lot more to talk about. Moving forward, what do you think your biggest concern is with this Husky team?
I mean, as much as I wrote about on Inside the Huskies how the Washington got those 3 fourth down stops, and when you look back at the game, Dominique Hampton got a break up in the end zone for 1. I believe I forgot who the far side. I think it was Mies Powell was the cornerback on Trayshawn Holden that took out the outside route and kind of forced Bo Nix to miss him wide. But the problem is, there's still, again, Washington's defense is fair. They're fine. They're decent, right? They're passable, they're serviceable, they're all those things. But in order for this team to win a semifinal, to win the Pac-12 championship, the defense has to be a little bit better. And I'm being critical because, again, I was critical of the offense. I was critical of the offense in the press box yesterday. It was one of those things where it's like, for what this team is set to achieve and is kind of building towards achieving, the defense has got to still match the offense, get closer to the offense, right? I mean, Jabbar Muhammad had his, I don't want to say worst game, but he was tested the most, and he did fine, right? He did okay, but I think even he would say he didn't have as good of a game as he wanted. But all that matters is that you come out with a win and you lock down when it matters. So I think they did that. They didn't get torched, right? I mean, they gave up 514 yards, which is back-to-back years that you gave up 500 yards to Oregon, and you only get one sack.
That's also a good offense too.
Right, exactly. And you only get 1 sack, but again, it's a good offense, and Bo Nix is a very elusive quarterback. So I think that you're at least getting the pressure. Braylon Trice blew up Josh Connolly on one bull rush that you pointed out to me, and it was one of the but the thing is, Bo got the ball off, and I believe it was a completed pass. I could be wrong on that, but
I think I know which play that was. I think that was it ended up being a missed tackle too, where it should have gone for a loss, and there was a missed tackle.
Exactly. And the thing with that is, and so that's kind of where I'm at with the defense, right? Where it's like, okay, Braylon Trice gets a massive push, but there's no sack because all you get is a pressure there, right? You get the pressure, but you don't get the sack. And I'm not saying sacks are everything, but in that situation, you maybe want to try and find a hopefully way to get Bo gets the ball out quick. And then the problem is the tackles. I think it was the Jordan James touchdown where they missed 4 tackles.
Yeah,
in about I think 4 tackles in 4 yards, and just cruises into the end zone. It's one of those, okay, yes, you guys got a 4th down stop in the end zone when you didn't, and so you got one of them, but then you also let them in just like that. It's like if you want to be that caliber, that when you want to have staying power in the top 5, when you want to have staying power year in, year out, those are the kind of defensive stops where it's like, hey, force it to be a field goal, or at the very least, force it to where it's like maybe it's not a missed tackle, but they're pushing the pile, right? You're not getting blown off the bar. You're not just whiffing completely like that. There's a difference between, yes, hey, we gave up a couple rushing touchdowns in the red zone, but it took them 3 tries or 4 tries. Like on 4th down, they finally get it,
Right.
Just kind of by inches, right? It's like that one. There's a difference between you get it by inches and just letting a guy bounce off you,
and just like kind of let him go by. Yeah. So exactly. I like what you're saying with the sacks aren't everything, because we did talk about like Braylon Trice getting the bull rush. Edifani Ulofoshio hits home and gets a sack. I honestly thought it should have been a half sack each to him and Braylon Trice, but there has to be a certain point where, and Oregon's offensive line is really good. Like they deserve credit for what they did because they played well. The Huskies offensive line played pretty well too. Check out that story that I got coming on Inside the Huskies. There's the plug. But that's something where there's a certain point where sacks need to happen, because this is a really talented defensive line, especially when you talk about Braylon Trice, who has the potential to be a 1st-round pick next April. And you just kind of need to see more. And they're doing really, really well. There were a lot of plays where Zion Tupuola-Fatui got into the backfield, but would whiff, or Bo Nix would just kind of step up and go by him because he broke contain, or there's nobody else back there that's getting any real pressure coming from the interior, which I think is becoming an issue, because getting pressure from the interior, you saw what that did early on to Michael Penix when Brandon Dorlus was able to just kind of hit home over right guard a couple of times. And I think that's something that you kind of want to keep an eye on with this team moving forward, because Arizona State and Stanford won't necessarily be a test the way that USC will be, but it's still something that you want to see these stacks. You want to see them pile up, because this was a huge part of the defensive success last year. And this defense is better than that one, in my opinion. It's close, I would say, but this one I would give it an edge. And but the one area where that defense just was much better was in recording sacks and getting the quarterback on the ground, because those are drive killers. The one sack that Washington got yesterday, it turned into a field goal, and that was great. And that was all that you could have really asked for from that drive. They took him out of field goal range, then Oregon just kind of got back into it. But that was the chance. And then of course the Huskies throw the interception after that. But then they're still able to make it an 11-point lead thanks to that sack. That sack was a huge part of making sure that happened.
Exactly. I think I said it in the moment in the press box where it's like, hey, if you don't get that sack, that's like, that it's got that kind of started the trend of the 4th down stops, right? Where it's like that was the first stop you get, and then the 4th down stop, then the 4th down stop, and the 4th down stop. So it's like when they did just enough, right? They did literally just enough. But the problem is, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't force a turnover yesterday.
They did not force a turnover. You're right.
So they lost. So you lose the turnover battle and somehow find a way to win the game. That implies there was also some coaching beneficiaries on the other side of the line, on the other side of the sideline, that might have not helped you out per se, but that certainly didn't hurt your cause.
Technically, if we want to go that route, they did win the turnover battle 3-1, or 3-2, excuse me. Because the Huskies also got stopped on a 4th down.
Oh, fair, right. That's
turnover on downs, but an actual forcing turnovers, yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
Yes, gotcha. Okay.
So because and that does count. That's kind of what I think those 3 4th down conversions are that were stopped are what we've been talking about all year with this defense, right? And yeah, there's still a lot of problems that need to be fixed with this defense, but when you see them step up when needed, when Dom Hampton just shout out to Mike Burrell who tweeted this. Volleyball spiked it into the Oregon bench on the last play of the first half. They stepped up when they needed to. That sack. They stepped up when they really needed to get something done. And the one time that then there's also Lars. We didn't see this because we were actually coming down the elevator from the press box to get onto the field. Was before Oregon called timeout. The Huskies actually stopped Oregon on 3rd and 2 at the start of that last drive after they were on the drive right after the Huskies got stopped in 4th down at the goal line. They stopped Oregon on 3rd and 2, but Dan Lanning had called timeout like right before the play. The whistle seemed kind of late, but that's just me. But the stop was made there, and then Troy Franklin just made a spectacular catch later on in that drive, or it felt like they could have gotten a stop right there too. And then, of course, it still comes at the very end of the drive, and it's just enough. And there's more that needs to be done. There's a lot more that needs to be done, but that's the difference between this year's defense and last year's defense. Because, and especially if you look at the UCLA game last year, there were so many different points where it's okay, just make one tackle on Dorian Thompson-Robinson here. Just make one PBU here. They couldn't ever do that. This defense has done that more often than that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's like making improvements, and that's what you want to see year to year. But now it's like, okay, you're midway through the season. You basically got through your toughest task. And you make those improvements against inferior teams that you should be able to do that to. I mean, to your point, looking at the turnover margin this year, they've only won the turnover margin twice. They've split it twice and lost it twice. This defense, especially when you're playing the caliber of teams prior to Oregon that you played, it's kind of a problem.
Right. That much I can definitely agree with you there. And now it's time for your Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Michael Penix Jr., who is now just solidly just asserted himself as the Heisman-favorite, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning and beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They brew over 50 styles of craft, non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, goldens, sours, and more. And one of the best parts about them is that there are no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic in-store, online, and at bars around the country. They're the fastest growing non-alcoholic brewery in the U.S., so get on board. You can find all of Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusives and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. I'm enjoying this. They're just nothing but more thoughts on the Oregon win, because I want to give a huge shout out to our friend and coworker Christian Capel over at On Mont Lake, because I was reading his post-game piece earlier today, and he said this is the kind of game that we will probably in all likelihood won't see again at Husky Stadium for decades to come. That this is just that once in a lifetime kind of experience, and it was just really cool to be a part of that. But one big thought that I did want to throw out there is, and Lars, I know this is something that I will have some fun talking about, but this is the second straight year that Oregon has faked an injury at the very end of the ball game. And you never want to accuse anybody of this, but Chris Hudson admitted it last year when he said, yeah, it was part of our game plan to just go down. And then with the way Terrence Ferguson, first of all, Oregon also had a timeout. They had a timeout that they could have called there and just avoided this whole situation, which I think makes it funnier. But he goes down, grabs his left knee, rolls over, and then grabs his right knee. And there were multiple players on the defense. I'm not going to just like throw them under the bus, but you can see who they are on the broadcast on the replay, who are just like giving thumbs down, just being like, yeah, no, this is very clearly fake. And like, that's just ridiculous, man. Like, this is, you talked on our Friday show about you will always trust the better coaching staff. One coaching staff is saying, all right, this is how we're going to scheme a 2-play drive with a minute and a half with 2 minutes on the clock. And the other coaching staff says, yeah, if we're down late, fake an injury. That's insane.
Well, and the thing is also, I could never fathom anybody on this coaching staff telling any of their position players, let alone Kalen DeBoer, saying that. Like, that's the thing. Like, I mean, could you imagine Demarcus Shepherd telling Rome Odunze to go down?
No, that would never happen.
When one of Demarcus Shepherd's mottos is, if you go out of bounds, like if you step out of back, if you go out intentionally, like, just to save yourself that extra yard or two, you are going to hell.
He said that on camera, which is one of my favorite all-time.
So like, imagine that coach saying, "Oh, hey, crap, we don't have a timeout.
I'm hurt.
Yeah, pull the hammy, like, like do something, like, it's like it's like that. It's just not in their DNA. And you know what? Even on defense, I couldn't imagine Chuck Morrell, if he saw one of his players going down that it wasn't actually heard. I could just see him with his sunglasses on, just being like,
he would just send him to the locker room. He'd just be like,
no. The eyes would send it. He wouldn't even say. He wouldn't point. He would just stand there, like.
That's what I'm saying. There's that look that you get. It's like the Chris Peterson looking at Travis Feeney a bunch of years ago. Just the stare down. That's what you get.
Exactly. It's like and that's why, again, I mean, there's two great programs, right? For all intents and purposes, Oregon. I mean, they were built up and et cetera, in their history and lack thereof and all that stuff. The different story. But I'm saying that in this moment in time, in this current moment in time, when they move to the Big Ten, Oregon will be a power in the Big Ten. Okay,
for sure.
But so will Washington, right? And equally as much as Washington. So like, it's just funny how two great programs get built two absolutely different ways, like in every almost sense of the word. I mean, yes, they both have a transfer quarterback. They both have, well, I guess Kalen DeBoer was the head coach previously at Sioux Falls, but no Power 5 head coaching prior experience.
Yeah.
So like they're very much built from some similar like note, but yet completely differently.
Right. There are so many differences in the program, and I mean, just to quote Courtney Morgan, "Substance wins again." But it's wild to just kind of see that is still happening. And I thought it was really interesting just kind of seeing some of the Oregon fans' reactions as Dan Lanning his record in just high level competition is not great so far. Like, they got destroyed against Georgia last year, which was somewhat expected, honestly, in my opinion, especially because that Georgia team is just unbelievably good. But then there's, he's 0-2 against Washington, 19 straight runs against Oregon State last year. That's not great. Like, we'll see what happens against USC and Oregon State this year, and then I think they play Utah too. Like, that's tough.
What's interesting is, since Notre Dame beat USC still doesn't have a conference loss. So if Oregon beats USC, I'm kind of curious how those tiebreakers are going to work out for who faces Washington again if Washington beats USC.
I think that would be Oregon, because USC would still be a 2-loss team.
I think you're right. Yeah, but I think from a conference, I think that would be the tiebreakers. Okay, which team has less losses total, if not for the same conference number of losses? So yeah. So again, likely you're likely we went into the season thinking probably USC and Washington will face each other in the Pac-12 championship game. They'll face them twice. Even Lincoln Riley told me that at Pac-12 media. He's like, we'll face them once this year, or maybe twice. Right? We'll see what happens. Right? He didn't guarantee it, but he's like, the inference around the conference was, hey, it's probably going to be USC and Washington. And now it's about to be Oregon and Washington, which is almost a reverse of last year when you had two Pac-12 South teams in. This year you get two Pac-12 North teams in, formerly Pac-12 North teams.
two Big Ten West teams.
Right, exactly. Well, exactly. That's why I noted that when we talked about the Big Ten schedule, is that there's no divisions in the Big Ten next year. So you will now get what you're getting this year in the Pac-12 in the Big Ten next year. So I think that it's kind of actually setting up well. And Washington's going to go into the Big Ten with 2 straight wins against Oregon. Like, if you would have told someone 2 years ago in 2021, and I know I'm not going to go down a certain road with this, but I'm just going to say, if you told someone in 2021, like midway, let's say at the end of September, Washington and Oregon in 2024 are going to be going into the Big 12 in 2024, and
Big
Washington is Big 10. What did I say? Big 24?
Big 12.
Oh, Big 12.
Very, very different.
Very much different. Yeah. When Washington and Oregon go to the Big 10 next year, Washington will be doing so on a 2-game win streak. Like all of that whole thought was not even in the picture 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
And then you can describe oh yeah, Washington's offense looked amazing and they put up a certain number of points and yards. And I would just say, are you like an alien? Like, I don't believe you.
Right. It's just so crazy to think about how like it was. Yeah. Because actually forget how they got there. Right. And then when you tell them it's built on an offense that's one of the best in the country, you're like,
no, I don't believe you. You're lying to me.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't think anybody would have believed that. Not even one of those. Not even one of those, let alone all of them.
Absolutely not. Got any final thoughts for us here today?
No, I mean, I think I think again we'll probably see. My final thought was we'll probably see Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. I think that's going to be how the season goes along. I'm going to still pick USC to keep my season long prediction, but I think Washington might actually beat USC now.
I can definitely see that happening. I can't say I have a final thought today either. It was just truly incredible to just kind of not just like now that we've actually been able to get some sleep. The one last thing that I did want to say was shout out to just everybody in the athletic department, man, because they saw everything that was going on. They just the level of the moment, and especially having that extra week to like lead up to it, getting game day and everything was super cool. And that environment was absolutely unbelievable. Like the ESPN people behind the scenes were telling us like, this is the coolest place we have been all year. This has been fantastic. And not only is that part of it great, but the athletic department as a whole, and I know you have a great video, Troy Dannon just giving Rome Odunze a high five after the touchdown, but just everything that this athletic department has done to just build up to this moment and then just kind of live up to it with the atmosphere and the fans who showed up. The fans just were unbelievable. I think my ears might still be ringing. I don't know if I could totally hear everything you said over the course of this podcast, but there's just truly, I just shout out to them on every single level. And Lars, shout out to you for showing up and being an everydayer, just like everybody out there who is just there helping us out. We really appreciate your support. We see all your comments on YouTube. That was a really fun live show that we did last night. We're hoping to do more of those after wins, just not after 7:30 games, because we're not going to ask you to stay until 2 a.m. with us. Lars just, no, thank you. But we really appreciate it. And if you're not an everydayer just yet, we'd love it if you became one. The easiest way to do that, subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get this podcast. We are there. Leave us a 5-star review, like the video, leave a comment. If you have a question for us, we'll try to get back to as many of you as we possibly can. And until then, we will see you on Tuesday.